Hey guys, welcome back to Election Center. And in this video, I'm going to talk to you guys about the 2020 election polling data and about how Biden has surged. Joe Biden, the Democratic nominee, has surged to a 10-point lead. And we're going to be talking about the significance of that 10-point national polling lead. So I'm basically going to be showing you guys these national numbers, some of these numbers in these battleground states. And so, as always, I'll be showing you guys the 538 forecast, real clear politics betting odds, these things that I always show in my videos. And then we're also going to be looking at past elections where the victor had about a 10-point margin in the popular vote. That was their margin of victory. And looking at how that translated onto the electoral map. And we're going to use that to segue into sort of a national electoral map prediction for what would happen if Joe Biden won by 10 points in the popular vote. So, yeah, I'm not necessarily predicting, okay, Joe Biden's going to win by 10 points in the popular vote, but we're just going to sort of run with that scenario because that's sort of what's going on right now in terms of the national picture we're seeing in these new national numbers. But anyway, guys, yeah, your eyes are not deceiving you here. Joe Biden has a 10.1% lead on the 538 average, where they weigh polls and whatnot. Here it says polling averages are adjusted based on state and national polls, which means candidates' averages can shift even though no new polls have been added to this page. So it looks like maybe they're incorporating state polls. They have their own weighting system, right? A bit of a methodology for how they come to this average. But on October 3rd, they showed plus 7.4% for Biden. That's 50.5 Biden, 40.3 Trump. And so, yeah, this race has been incredibly stagnant, roughly at that 7 to 9 point area. Joe Biden was almost at 10 points once, but this is his all-time high, 10.1% lead on 538. And from October 3rd to October 10th, he surged to 10.1 on his lead. Or really, it was October 9th when he reached there, and it's so far unchanged on October 10th. So, how did that happen? Well, he was at 50.5, goes to 52.1. Trump, side by side, simultaneously, he goes down a little, 43.1, 42. So I think Trump loses a point roughly. Biden maybe gains 1 or 2 points. That results in his lead going up about 2.7%, if I recall. 7.4. Yeah, about 2.7%. So, uh, yeah, this is actually this really is telling to how stagnant the polls have been in this race, or how steady the numbers have been, because this, compared to previous data, is actually a sharp turn. Uh, I don't think we've seen a turn or a change that sharp thus far, at least during the general election portion of the campaign. Uh, and this is a decent change. This is 2.7% in the margin. That's not nothing, but it sort of also goes to show how stagnant this race has been, because that's one of the bigger changes of this campaign so far. And really, when you think about it, in past elections, there have been much bigger sways in these numbers, right? So yeah, 10.1%, that's Joe Biden's national lead. 10.1%, that's a really large lead. That's a really large lead. And so yeah, let's look at these battleground states here. Arizona, that's a 3.8% lead for Joe Biden. Surprisingly, when we're seeing this 10.1% lead, uh, we're seeing just a 3.8 lead for Joe Biden when he's led by much more before, or a bit more before. 5.3% he was leading in September 10th. So it looks like this 10.1% lead nationally has not translated into much of a larger lead in the state of Arizona. And real quickly, before we want to move on to this next state here, or another battleground state, I just want to address that this shift in the polls is coming after the presidential debate and after Trump's COVID-19 diagnosis. So just think about that as you're watching this video, that these factors could be what's causing this shift in the polls. Trump's COVID-19 diagnosis, it seems like a majority of Americans, I think I saw in a poll, I believe, think that Trump was not responsible enough when it came to COVID-19, and he could have prevented himself from getting it. That's sort of what I recall seeing in a poll. So yeah, just keep these factors in mind, that could be what's causing this shift. One of the larger shifts so far. Colorado, not much of a battleground state these days. It's kind of a battleground state, but it's more left leaning. It's not like Florida where it's always really neck and neck, it seems. Colorado, we're seeing a 12-point lead for Joe Biden. Uh, it's been a while since a Republican won here in Colorado. I believe 2004 may have been the last time a Republican won here. So yeah, it seems that maybe it's getting a bit out of Republicans' reach, but we'll see. But yeah, that's what's going on in the state of Colorado. Florida, we see that sort of really tight race that we were seeing. It's now gone to a 4.3 lead for Joe Biden. So 1.5 is what the average was. This is where I really thought, okay, I think actually Trump might be favored to win Florida because 1.5 definitely within the margin of error. And Andrew Gillum led by a few points in Florida during the 2018 gubernatorial elections. He was the Democratic candidate. Rick DeSantis, Republican. Rick DeSantis took the narrow victory. I believe maybe, if I'm recalling correctly, the polls showed Clinton ahead in Florida last time too. So yeah, 4.3 not insurmountable, but just keep that in mind. Less close than it was before, and a lot of the time we think of the margin of error as like 3 points. So this might be outside of that margin of error. However, undecided voters, whatnot, those could come Trump's way. But yeah, Florida closer than some of these other states because Trump is making inroads with Latino voters, Cuban Americans. So that's helping to counteract some of these new gains that Joe Biden has made relative to Hillary Clinton. But yeah, Georgia, 538's giving Biden a narrow lead in the state of Georgia. Iowa, they're even giving him a narrow lead. These are states that Trump won substantially in 2016. Of course, Georgia and Texas trending more to the left, it seems, but they still have that Republican edge to them. Maine, a huge lead for Biden in Maine. We'll see if Trump can pull out that second congressional district, which maybe is trending more to the right relative to the rest of Maine. But yeah, Clinton won by less than 3% statewide in Maine, and 538 is giving this average lead to Joe Biden by 15 points. Maybe we'll also corroborate some of this with Real Clear Politics, just if you want to see if there's a difference between the averages on Real Clear Politics and 538. But Michigan here, 8.2 lead for Biden, so I guess slightly narrower than the national average. But, that's a pretty solid lead. And, I do want to point out, if these numbers are true, right? And if these numbers hold up on election day, and then the disparity between the polls and the final result is as great as it was in 2016, I'm pretty sure that would still lead to a big Biden victory, or maybe not big, but substantial, relatively substantial. But yeah, Minnesota, 9-point lead for Joe Biden. This is a battleground state. Republicans hoping to finally win. Unbroken Democratic streak since 1976. Carter won 1976, and every subsequent election it's gone Democratic. But yeah, Minnesota, Republicans hoping to win here, but it's showing 9 points for Joe Biden on 538. Here's Real Clear Politics, and we'll go to these polls here. What state is this? Minnesota. Just in case you guys want to verify that it's not wildly different. Yeah. Minnesota, they're also giving similar numbers. Oftentimes, there's not too much of a discrepancy between Real Clear Politics and 538. Real Clear Politics, I think they just do things a bit of a different way. I don't know if they have a whole methodology for their averaging, but at the same time, they specifically include the most recent poll out of a set of pollsters, I think. That's how I think they do it. But yeah, let's just look at a few more of these states. We might not look at every battleground state, but New Hampshire solidly for Joe Biden. Ohio, Trump won by 8 points. Now this is narrow flip to Biden. Let's see if they're showing the same on RCP. Yep, they're showing 0.6 for Biden. So if Biden's narrowly leading by 0.9 on election day, 0.9, basically a tie. I want to show you guys Pennsylvania, narrower than the national average, but still a substantial Biden lead. Texas, narrow lead for Trump. And then just to finish this off here, I guess with Wisconsin, we'll take a look. 7.3 for Biden. And so, yeah, definitely very substantial numbers for Biden. Really, out of all these battleground states, let's look here. Looks like so far maybe Texas is the only one on 538 where Trump is leading. But, that's expected that he's going to have the edge there. A lot of these states where it was thought that he had the edge, they're showing narrow leads for Biden. But, yeah, Some other interesting states are Montana, where it's closer than you might expect. Missouri, same story. Oh, North Carolina, that's one state we didn't look at. Let's look at North Carolina here. They're showing a narrow lead for Biden. So yeah, let's look here too. North Carolina, once again, a narrow lead for Biden. Now, let's look at the 538 forecast. There are plenty of other forecasts. This is one I follow personally, the 538 forecast. This is just one I follow. And it seems maybe they're one of the more conservative forecasts compared to some of these other ones. But there are a lot of forecasts. JHK forecast, that's one people look at. Economist, another one, The Economist. But yeah, they're forecasting, it looks like, if I do my arithmetic real quick, 4.7. So turn that into 7.7. And then that's 8.1. Last time I checked, it was an 8% lead they were forecasting. This is what they're forecasting for the popular vote percentages, pretty much. And yeah, they're predicting an 8.1 popular vote margin in Joe Biden's favor. Electoral votes. Looks like, I don't know if this is on a state-by-state basis in terms of if you add up who they're favoring in each state, but they're pretty much projecting in 80% of all outcomes, it says, fall within this range. 344 for Biden, 194 for Trump. So that's a pretty substantial margin in the electoral vote. Not quite 2008 levels of Obama versus McCain. A lot of people call it a landslide. I don't know if I think it's quite a landslide, but yeah. 344, 194. That's what they're projecting. They give Trump just a 14% chance. So this is Biden's best chance that he's been given so far in the 538 forecast. 85 to 14. At every other point, it's been closer. This is Trump's, by the way, worst point ever. 14%. I'm not quite sure when the forecast launched. They're able to roll back the graph a little before, or maybe a lot before it was launched. But if you look at this graph, it's never been this wide of a gap. 85 to 14. But yeah, this is just what the 538 forecast is saying. I do think it's interesting to look at what their forecast has to say. And they're showing Biden's way favored to win. But yeah, to show you guys the real clear politics betting odds, who people are currently betting on winning in the betting odds. And to show you guys here, this might also be one of Biden's, this is Biden's best point. Plus 30.6 for Biden. Yeah, 65 to 34.4. We see 2 to 1. That's pretty much what people are betting. 2 to 1 almost. So yeah, it looks like people are betting heavily for Joe Biden. And so yeah, that's what's going on with this new polling data. And we look at this forecast I like to look at, 538's forecast, and the real clear politics betting odds. But yeah, Joe Biden really doing well right now, and a 10-point lead in the popular vote. That's really quite substantial. If you look at past elections, you'll see that's quite substantial. And just to put it in perspective, let's look at 2012 and 2016. I want to show you guys the 2016 polls. Far closer. Clinton never got to this point. Trump was actually leading narrowly at 1.2%. I don't know if this was part of the... This is like around the RNC, I believe, if I'm recalling correctly. But, yeah, always a lot narrower. Clinton was just leading it by 3.3 on Election Day. Her largest lead, it looks like, was maybe 7%, almost 8%. And 2012, I want to show you guys Romney leading at a couple of points. It was really neck and neck, especially towards the end. We saw Obama's high point was maybe 4%, so that's nothing compared to these numbers we're seeing for Joe Biden. And in 2008, Obama won by 7% in the popular vote. And these are kind of similar to 2008 numbers, I think, what we're seeing for Biden right now in these new polls. So yeah, Biden definitely in very good shape right now. This is not being biased to a particular candidate. I'm not being biased towards the Joe Biden campaign or favorable to them. This is just objectively a substantial lead for Joe Biden. And so, yeah, now let's look at some of these past elections. Here I'm using this website, uselectionatlas.org, just because they have all of the results in one place. I just don't like using Wikipedia too much when I'm making videos. So, yeah. Let's go back to an election Like 2008, it was maybe a similar deal. It was actually a lesser margin. So let's go back to 1996. It was an 8.4 margin in the popular vote, and I think it's just interesting. Dynamics of the electoral map obviously a lot different back then. So what happened in one of these past elections where the victor won by 10 points or close to 10 points maybe, it's not necessarily an indicator of what would happen in 2020 if Joe Biden won the election and in the popular vote he won by 10 points. It wouldn't necessarily be an indicator of what would happen in 2020 just because the dynamics of the electoral map were different. But another thing to keep in mind is that back then states weren't as safe red, safe blue, less polarized, so I feel like that maybe made it easier for a more lopsided electoral vote count. But it's still interesting, in my opinion, just to look at how a 10-point lead ended up going out on the electoral map in these past elections. It's interesting to look at. 379 electoral votes for Clinton, Democrat, Republican Dole getting 159, and that was as the result of an 8.4 margin in the popular vote. 1988 it was like an 8-point margin, so that resulted in 426 Bush, Republican, Democrat Dukakis 111. That's a wide margin. But let's go back to 1980 because that was a 9.7% margin in the popular vote. And we see here Ronald Reagan absolutely crushing Jimmy Carter. 489 electoral votes for Reagan, 49 for Carter, so that's like a 10-to-1 margin. See Carter winning just 6 states in D.C. Now, maybe John Anderson, independent, getting 7% of the vote, slightly less than that, 6.61%, it looks like, not winning any states. But yeah, maybe he was taking more heavily from Carter in certain areas. Maybe Massachusetts or something would have gone Carter if there was an uneven split. But yeah, a lot of really close states here in the South, so that can lead to more of an imbalance when we see the popular vote 9.7, but then these absolutely huge margins in the electoral vote. That disparity maybe is caused partially because of these really close states, but it's a winner take all for each state. So if it was a proportional system, it wouldn't have been such a landslide. But anyway, 1980, very similar margin in the popular vote to what it's seeing like in the current polls. Obviously, it's going to change possibly between now and election day. But yeah, 1988, 9.7 margin in the electoral, or in the popular vote, but an absolute landslide in the electoral vote. Not too many elections in recent times when the winner won by 10 points. In 2000, this is now getting into more recent history. Less than a point for the Democrat. 2004, a couple of points. 2008, 7 points. 2012, a few points, maybe 4. In 2016, just a couple of points actually going for Clinton, not Trump, even though Trump managed to win the Electoral College. But yeah, you see in these more recent elections, it hasn't been a 10-point margin of victory since, maybe 1980 was the last time. Of course, 1984 was far greater than 10 points, but yeah, this would be one of those more substantial margins if we sort of look at recent elections, especially every election since 2000. It's been a while since there was that large of a margin now. It could be a narrower margin. Polls could change between now and election day. Polls could be slightly overestimating Biden. Maybe some undecided voters or something go to Trump. But yeah, it would be pretty substantial. Looking at historical standards, I think if Biden were to win by 10 points in the popular vote, that's pretty darn substantial. But yeah, now we're getting to the portion of the video where I sort of fill in a map with this sort of scenario in mind. If Biden won by 10 points in the popular vote, what would sort of be the result on the electoral map? Well, we can give him these safe states and these likely states, obviously. I'm just going to fill everything in a solid color. But yeah, it would obviously, I think, in my opinion, be a wide margin for sure. Maybe we'd see the 2nd district. I'll leave that blank for now. But yeah, Illinois, obviously. Virginia, more left-leaning state. But yeah, we'd see definitely like these battleground states that we think of as traditional battlegrounds go to Biden. These Midwest or Rust Belt states, I think. Nebraska 2nd, we'd see go to him. Some states that wouldn't go to him, Idaho, Wyoming, the Dakotas, Oklahoma, Utah, these southern states that are pretty safe Republican: West Virginia, Mississippi, Louisiana. I think some states that would be pretty narrow. South Carolina, more narrow than we'd expect, but Arkansas, Missouri would be a bit narrow, possibly, but it'd still go to Trump, maybe by lean or likely. Kansas, that'd go to him, I think. Nebraska, the rest of Nebraska for sure. Montana and Alaska, that'd be interesting to think about. I would say that they'd go to Trump by a bit still. Arizona, we'd see definitely go to Biden. Indiana, go to Trump. I think we could see narrowly this second district go to Biden, possibly. And I also think maybe Georgia would go to Biden. 351 electoral votes. He's already up to approaching 2008, Obama versus McCain numbers for the Democratic camp. Iowa, let's think. Iowa. This went to Trump by 9 points, but remember it went for Obama like 5 points in 2012. So maybe that's a big swing. So I'm trying to think here. In 2008 it was probably even bigger, but I think it went for Bush in 2004. So I think Biden could win this in this 10-point scenario, as well as Ohio. So he's up to 375 electoral votes. And Texas, that was 9 points in 2016 for the Trump camp. They won it over Clinton by 9 points. She won the popular vote by 2 points. So we're sort of, you could think of it as like an 8-point shift in terms of 2 points to 10 points, right? In terms of the Democratic margin and the popular vote, how much they beat the Republican in the popular vote by. But it has trended to the left some. So I think maybe it could narrowly go to Biden. So, give or take a state, maybe if we want to be generous to Trump in this type of scenario, we could do this, or maybe this, even. But sort of trusting my gut to an extent, I feel like if Biden won the popular vote by 10, either this or this. But for now, I'll just do this. So yeah, that's 413 electoral votes for Biden. And that's 125 electoral votes for Trump. Maybe we would see this. I'm sort of split between this type of thing, which is actually a bit different than this type of thing. But yeah, if this happened, it'd be just across the board Biden victories in every sort of conventional battleground state. And really the bare bones states going to Trump, the bare bones Republican sort of safe states, maybe some of these more likely states as well, where it's not totally safe. But yeah, we see 413 for Biden, 125 for Trump. This type of scenario, Trump would have some dignity carrying the state of Texas, but Biden making serious inroads on Trump's 2016 electoral map. But yeah, that's pretty much just a rundown for you guys of this sort of 10-point lead that we're seeing for Biden in the polls. But yeah, that's pretty much a wrap on this video. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, thought it was interesting. Definitely let me know your guys' thoughts below. Leave a comment or something. Interesting on chatting with you guys. If you disagree with anything I said in this video, definitely let me know. I'm interested in we could have a little debate. If you really agree with me, also let me know. I'm also just interested in hearing your guys' thoughts on the 2020 election and sort of the state of the race right now. But yeah, if you enjoy this type of content I make here on this channel, I think you should definitely subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you're into electoral maps, polling analysis, all things elections related, I think you should definitely subscribe to my channel, because my videos are pretty much going to be right up your alley if you're into this sort of thing. But yeah, I say once again, hope you enjoyed this video, thought it was interesting, and I will see you in the next Election Center video. Bye, guys.